All of you know our legislative session, our state legislature, we used to say it adjourned, but it's temporarily recessed. I don't know whether it's adjourned or not, Jake, but I can tell you we had a great session this year, and I'm going to ask Jake Parker, our state legislative director. He and Paul Sherman represent our organization down there it's gotten where, Commissioner, it's not just during this, a 24/7 schedule that they have down there. And so I'm going to ask Jake to come up and quickly give you a few highlights of this session and what you can expect. Jake?
Thank you, President Wood. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. It's great to see all of you, and it is a privilege to represent you at the General Assembly. We have had a very good session, as President Wooten said, and I wanted to, on Policy Review Day, take the opportunity to remind you of why your policy development process is so important. The policies that you develop, the conversations that you have today, guide me and Paul as we're at the legislature, and guide Linda when she's on Capitol Hill. And so my brief legislative update, I'm going to talk about two bills that passed that were really big wins for agriculture in North Carolina, and they are the result of your policy development process. The first one is H-467. It was a bill that dealt with our state's nuisance law, and what it did is it clarified that when you have a lawsuit, when somebody brings a lawsuit against a farmer for nuisance violations, the damages that they can get are only limited to the fair market value of their property. Pretty simple. That's what we always thought nuisance law in North Carolina meant. But there were some trial lawyers from out of state and regrettably some from in-state that were trying to turn our nuisance law into a personal injury claim, claiming that living next to a hog farm might create some future illness, for example, or that they have some respiratory problem. Those are issues that should be dealt with through the personal injury system, not perverting our nuisance law. So that bill was passed with bipartisan support in the General Assembly, and we have a policy that talks about strengthening our right to work law, our right to farm law, which deals with nuisance issues. So that was a big win for us. Unfortunately, Governor Cooper vetoed that bill, and we had to go to the General Assembly and ask for them to override the veto, and they stepped up and on a bipartisan basis overrode the veto. So that bill is now law. The second bill is S-615, the North Carolina Farm Act, and we've got Ross Barnhart, my good buddy who works for Senator Brent Jackson. Senator Jackson every year introduces a Farm Act. Commissioner Troxler and Farm Bureau and other groups all get together and we say, Senator Jackson, here's what the farm community tells us they need. And Senator Jackson and Jimmy Dixon, a representative from Duplin County, all get together and they put this bill together. Well, this year the bill had a lot of provisions in it, as it always does, and some of them related to agritourism issues. Commissioner Troxler and all of us have been traveling around the state, and you all know very well there's some debate about what kind of agritourism activities should be exempt from county regulation, county zoning. And so the idea behind this was, and the agritourism committee that we have here at Farm Bureau helped create some of the ideas that went into that bill. And what the bill said was, if you are a qualifying farmer under the state sales tax law, that is, you have more than $10,000 in annual gross income and you're exempt from paying sales tax on your feed, seed, fertilizer, et cetera, or you're enrolled in the present use value program, you're exempt from county zoning if you're doing agritourism activities, including wedding venues, receptions, U-pick operations, corn mazes, et cetera. Help clarify that area, I guess, arguably, the county regulators would say, the gray area there in the law. We always thought it was very clear that if you were in agriculture production, you were exempt from county zoning. But that provision in the bill was something that came from the Agritourism Advisory Committee all the way up through our process. And the second issue in that bill that was very important and we were very pleased to see happen was there was language in the bill that deals with overly aggressive farm worker union activity in North Carolina. And there are two parts to that particular provision in the bill. The first one dealt with a situation where, let's say, for example, a farmer gets sued by a lawyer who works for some farm worker union folks, and the lawsuit says, you didn't pay your workers overtime when you should have. You didn't pay your workers enough wages. And so you get the lawsuit, and you start worrying about how you're going to pay for it, who you're going to hire as a lawyer to defend you in it. And then you get another letter. I like to call it a love letter, jokingly, of course. And that letter says, we can make this all go away if you unionize your farm. We have strong policy for many years that says we oppose the unionization of farm workers. That's what the policy says. So what we asked the General Assembly for and what they worked on with us was language that says if you cannot use a sue and settle strategy to force a farmer into a union. The second provision deals with the withholding of wages when you have a collective bargaining agreement with a farm worker union and an H-2A provider, for example. And what we understand is that there is a current collective bargaining agreement, which I don't have to tell many of you about. But in that agreement, there's a provision that says the farmer, who wasn't at the table negotiating that agreement, has to withhold the union dues from their employees and then transmit it directly to the union.
2.5%.
It's 2.5% of their wages that goes to pay for the union. We have strong policy that says we don't support that kind of conduct. And so what we asked for and what the General Assembly worked with us on was language that says that is against the public policy of North Carolina, and it is those kind of agreements are void and unenforceable. Now, we couldn't go in and blow up the current collective bargaining agreement. That would be against the United States Constitution's freedom of contract clause. But moving forward, that's going to be the law in North Carolina. Governor Cooper did sign that bill. So he gets a tip of the hat there for signing that one and not vetoing it. We think we would have been able to override the veto if we had to. But all of those policy accomplishments that we've had at the General Assembly are a direct result of what you do today. And so we're very grateful for what you do. Paul and I, we don't stray too far from the policy book. Now, we may get creative in how we get a bill moving or what amendment we use or which legislator we talk to, but we hold really tight to what y'all tell us to do. So it's very important that you have those conversations today, raise those issues. Staff, Mitch Peel, and the rest of the public policy team, we're going to be in those meetings to give you updates, help you work through those issues that come up. But with that, I want to say thank you for what you do. It is a privilege and honor to represent you as a city boy from a small college town in Orange County. Nobody ever gets that one. Some people do. It's a privilege to represent you at the General Assembly. Thanks for all you do. And Paul and I will be running around here today, so if you get a chance, stop and talk to us. If you've got an issue that came up, we'll be happy to talk about it. Thanks very much for having me. I appreciate you.